Excellent. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is the City of the Dalles Vision 2040 Community Town Hall. We're going to be here from 5:30 to 7 in this Zoom space. Appreciate everyone being here and spending part of your evening with us. We're really excited about this conversation. I'll introduce myself briefly. I'm Aubrey Koenig. I am here supporting the city with the Visioning Project and excited to facilitate the conversation tonight. And I do want to note before we get too far in that we are offering Spanish interpretation, and you can access that at the bottom of your screen. There's a toolbar. There's a little world icon. If you click that, you can switch over to the Spanish audio version of our main meeting this evening. And I will drop those instructions into the chat here in a moment as well. And we're also recording tonight's meeting. So for anyone who wasn't able to attend live, we are going to make the meeting recording available on the city's website so folks can check it out after the fact. And with that, I'm going to turn it over. Love to invite Mayor Mays to say a few words of welcome.
Thank you, Aubrey, and thank you all very much for coming. The city, have been conducting a community visioning exercise to dream big about the future of the Dalles. We've been doing this since 1995. And since then, the city has updated our community vision about every 10 or 15 years. This is the third edition of the Dalles Community Vision, and we're very glad you're here, and we're especially impressed that as of right now, we have 105 people participating in this exercise. That's how many people. We're probably going to be expecting more as they trickle in, but right now we're at 105, and I think that's a great number to have. 5 of those people are people I think are special people that I'd like to introduce. People that volunteer their service to the city of the Dalles. First, Tim Mclaughlin, who is the council president, Darcy Long, Rod Runyon, Scott Randall, and Dan Richardson, all on the city council. With this turnout, we know you care a lot about the Dalles and its future. We started this effort last fall when we launched a community survey. About 440 people responded to the survey and shared all of your thoughts and ideas. And you're going to hear a summary of those results tonight, and you're going to help the city council set our priorities for our future. We welcome your dreams and ideas, and let us hear your voice as we plan for our future. And again, thank you all very much for coming. And I'll turn it back over to Aubrey.
Great. And just in case, I'm going to add those instructions on accessing the Spanish interpretation into the chat and let folks take advantage of that as needed. And I'm going to, we're adding a few more folks from the waiting room right now as well. So what do we have in store for tonight? So 5:30 to 7, we're going to be having this conversation. We basically have 3 parts of our meeting. We're going to, as we said, kick things off with some welcome and introductions. In a moment, Alice Cannon from the city is going to provide a visioning overview and some highlights from the community engagement so far, which is a great foundation for our conversation tonight. Then we're going to dig in to discussion groups, and we have a number of volunteers who have bringing their time to dig in on those topics. They're going to help guide some breakout room conversations around key focus areas that came forward from the initial engagement. Then we're going to come back as a full team here and do a report out and have a chance for public comment towards the end of this evening, and then take a look forward at next steps and close things out. So we have a lot of folks on the call. We're going to try and keep to our time, but of course, the main reason that we are here tonight is to hear from all of you. And so we have a few tools that we're going to be using throughout the evening. If it's been a little bit since you've been in a Zoom meeting, I just want to point out a couple of features of the Zoom space. So there should be a toolbar that floats up on your screen that has a mute and unmute button. It also has a chat button. Please keep your mic muted unless you're speaking. That'll just keep the ambient noise down. You can, at any point tonight, use that chat button. If you toggle that button on or off, you'll see the chat and you can type in a comment or pose a question. Try to get to as many of those as we can. And if we can't do it in the meeting, we will address those after the fact. And as I mentioned, we're also going to use the breakout rooms and do a couple of polls here as well. So we're going to try to keep this interactive. And with that, Alice, do you want to tell us a little bit about the goals for the visioning process?
Good evening. So nice to have you all here. Really excited to be working on this project. I've been working alongside City Manager Julie Kruger to lead the efforts on this project. I want to thank our project consultant, Barney and Worth, who Aubrey works for, and they've done a phenomenal job. So thank you. Before I say anything else, I wanted to say that. A community-wide vision is a chance to set our sights on a shared idea of our future. And the Dalles has a history, as the mayor mentioned earlier, of setting a vision. Since 1995, we've embarked on this project about every 10 to 15 years. The last vision was adopted in 2011, and that was the 2030 vision. This is now the 2040 vision, and it will update that plan to better reflect our goals for today and today's conditions. Tonight's town hall meeting is part of a larger effort to collect input and your big ideas about our future, and we want to hear your voice.
Great. So we are going to continue inviting some input through the chat, but we also have a couple of poll questions here just to get to know folks in the space. You know, that's hard to do with a virtual meeting, but we're going to do our best here. So Kim, if you want to launch the first poll, we're going to just get a sense of how long everyone has been in the area. And we're going to, shortly you'll see a pop-up screen and you can chime in and say, you know, less than 1 year, 1 to 10 years, 10 plus years, or if those don't fit the equation, you can type something else into the chat and tell us a little bit about your time in the community. Seen lots of folks, 1 to 10 years and 10 plus years. Give it just a minute. Oh my goodness, we've got 50 plus years coming in on the chat. That is awesome. Thank you guys so much for that. Great. Well, like we almost have everybody chiming in. Perfect. So you can see we've got about 45% of the crowd tonight, 10 plus years, including some of those 50 plus years in the chat, and about 40% 1 to 10 years. So excellent. And we have one more poll question. And that is, what makes the Dalles special? Just share a little bit. We have heard through the initial community engagement that beautiful location, great weather, rural small town feel are some of the things that people feel really strongly about when they think about the Dalles. If there's something else on your mind, you can type that into the chat. And certainly you can pick more than one option here as well. I see beautiful location is taken the, oh, cherries, there we go. All of the above, history, amazing historic community. Awesome. Thank you guys. Yes, people working together. So small town and collaborative. Great. Got about 80% participating. Beautiful location has about 46% of folks checking that, and about 32% of folks identifying rural small town feel as something that is pretty darn special about the Dalles. So many days of sunshine. I love it. Great. Okay. See those real quick. And we are going to stop sharing the poll, close out of that. And we're going to go back to Alice.
Thank you, Aubrey. As I mentioned earlier, we started the 2040 visioning effort last fall by kicking it off with a community survey. We shared key takeaways from that initial survey effort with the council last month. The town hall is really the second phase of this important work. The intent is to use this community input to help reflect those initial ideas and to have you help us prioritize those. As we move forward in this process, we're planning another community survey to help us further refine and prioritize these vision ideas, especially for those who weren't able to make it tonight. So ultimately, we'll create a Dalles Vision 2040 plan that includes actions that you are going to help us define today, and that will help us achieve a collective vision for our future.
So Allison.
Oh, I'm going on, sorry. I was waiting for you, Aubrey. Sorry about that. Okay, so between November and December, we collected 439 community members responded to our survey effort. We had 434 English speakers, 5 Spanish responses. We were pleased with that. We want to do better next time. As you can see through this composition, there were predominant number of respondents said that they live in the Dalles, a number that worked in the Dalles, own and operate business, and visit and play in the Dalles. So the top 3 themes that came out of the things that our respondents appreciate the most about the Dalles: the Columbia River, the friendly hometown feel, and the unique history. As you'll see that there are a number of other equally important attributes that people responded to, and you'll see that in the response here. So we asked respondents to rank how they see the Dalles on a scale of 1 to 7, with 1 meaning that the community lacks something, and 7, it has everything. We came out somewhere between 3 and 7. And what that means for us is that we have room for improvement. And that's what's important tonight, is to hear your good ideas so that we can improve that score, and also just have a community that includes more of the things that you're looking for in the future of this great city. To get a clearer picture of the community needs, we also asked the Dalles, we also asked respondents to tell us what they want more of. And some of those top themes include restaurants and retail shops, community events, family activities, and open spaces that are usable, such as parks, paths, and trails. And you see some representative quotes off to the right of the slide. We also asked what you think is missing in our community or should be improved. Some of the top themes included school, youth activity, restaurant, retail options, as we mentioned before, parks, paths, river access, and affordable housing. We hear that an awful lot. And we took note of some quotes that came right out of the survey. You'll see off to the right. We asked what are the most important programs and projects to invest in over the next 5 years. And the good news is that these ideas really fit in very well with the key themes that were represented in the last 2011 community vision. And that includes enhancing education, the category enhancing education. There was a lot of interest in upgrading our high school facility, developing more youth activity programs, very lot of interest in creating economic vitality through affordable housing, revitalizing our downtown, and supporting our small businesses. Another key theme, providing recreation and open space. Really important here is to restore Cirrhosis Park, improve the trails, paths, and river access, establish a community dog park. And the next category is improving governance and infrastructure, improve hospital facilities and health services. We've heard a bit about that in the community in the last few months. Maintain our roads and create accessible sidewalks, and explore opportunities to improve broadband in our community as well. Strengthening and sustaining community life, developing music and art events. I know there's been a lot of good work by community volunteers in this area, and I think people are very, very interested in this. Establish a community center or a plaza, fostering cultural enrichment, hosting cultural events that honor our diversity that we find in our community.
So that brings us to a transition point in tonight's meeting. The key focus areas, the themes that Alice just brought up, are going to be the topics for the discussion groups that we're going to host in a moment. So shortly here, you're going to get an invitation to select the topic of your choice. And you can join a breakout room and have a conversation with a little bit of a smaller group that's going to be facilitated by some volunteers from the city and partnering organizations. And they have some questions that they're going to ask, and they're going to use a digital whiteboard to take some notes during that conversation. We're going to do that for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to come back to this main space, hear some takeaways from each of those discussion groups, and have some time for public comment. So the topics, again, that you can choose from, and there are multiple groups. There's going to be an A and a B group for enhancing education. So you can choose one of those and join in. If we need to shuffle just from a balancing quantity, we'll go ahead and take care of that. If you're interested in economy, there will be 2 creating economic vitality groups, mouthful. There's also going to be 2 improving governance and infrastructure groups, if that's your topic of interest. If you'd like to spend time on recreation and open space, we'll have 2 groups that are going to dive into that topic. We're also going to have 2 groups that are going to look at strengthening and sustaining community life. And that is like the plaza and some of those other gathering spaces that Alice mentioned. And then we're going to have 1 group for fostering cultural enrichment. And apologies that is the odd one out. It just so happens that we have 11 volunteers from a facilitation perspective. So we'll make sure that cultural enrichment does not get the short end of the straw. Exciting topic. So the breakout rooms, in a few minutes, you're going to see a pop-up window, and that will let you select which of these topics you want to join a conversation on. And then I'd have just a little bit of shuffling while we get folks into rooms, and you're going to have 2 facilitators, 1 or 2 facilitators representing our team who are going to guide the conversation. And with that, I think, and I see a question. So Nick, thank you for that question. The interest is if we wanted to trade topics midstream, to do that, if you feel like, okay, I've had my piece, I really am interested in this other topic as well, you can leave the breakout room, come back to this main living room space that we're in right now, and then Kim will help you get into a different breakout room of your choice.
When are you going to do that?
And sorry, there was a little bit of feedback there, but if there was a question and you have a chance to just type that into the chat, let us know. And I think, Kim, if you want to go ahead and pull that breakout room invite up so that we can get folks in.
Right, I sent it up. Everybody should see the screen.
Kim, there is sorry, Aubrey, there is a question from John. Hands up.
Well, John, if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Sorry, that was a typo.
Okay.
No question at this time.
Okay, thanks, John. Appreciate it. Yeah, if anybody's looking for the hands up option, that is in the reactions icon, and you can use that during the breakout room conversations as well. So go ahead if you're ready to select your topic of choice.
I do have a question, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Hi, this is Philip Masher, and I'm just wondering, hearing that this process has happened several times before in the Dalles, I'm wondering if we could just briefly hear about actual concrete impact that previous visioning sessions have had on how the city has developed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Philip. I appreciate that question. This is I think the 3rd or 4th year that the city has done this. The 2030 vision was the most recent. And there's a number of examples of things that have happened and things that are still in progress, I would say. What I'd love to do, just to give folks a chance to dig in on these conversations in a smaller group, is maybe we could come back to that after the breakout room conversation, Philip, and we can also provide a link to that prior vision plan, which is part of the website work as well. Real quickly, if folks haven't selected to join a breakout room conversation, that pop up, I should say, window. If you scroll down, the education and economy and infrastructure, another group, and you can click that blue join button and
I don't see where that is. I don't have anything except the breakout group discussion topics. How do you get to selecting?
On the right-hand side of any of those breakout room topics, you should be able to click a blue join button.
I'm going to stop sharing. That might make it a little easier to see that pop-up window. All right, so I'm actually going to not share any slides for a moment here, but we have about a half hour left in the meeting. And we have two things that we wanted to do still. So we want to take a minute and we want to have the facilitators from each group share a couple of key takeaways from those conversations. We're going to invite some additional input in the chat if folks want to share a personal reflection from that conversation. And then we're going to keep like 10 minutes or so for additional public comments, and then close it out with a look forward and next steps. So that is our path forward here. And I'm going to invite on somebody. So Tom, do you want to share a little bit from your group?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So my group was the breakout session for recreation and open space. And as we all know, there's sort of three strategic priorities that have been identified previously in the visioning process, which are to restore Cirrhosis Park to its former grandeur and really improve upon what's already there. And then to improve trails, paths, and river access around town. And I think those things all sort of intertwine, especially with the river being already identified as such a great resource for this community. And then the hopeful establishment of a community dog park. And we talked about what that might be like and sort of the ideals of what we might hope to expect in a community dog park. So just a few of the ideas, and these might not necessarily flow exactly within the subject, but I'll do my level best to talk about some of the main themes. In Cirrhosis Park was people were looking for areas with shade. There was definitely an interest in having more developed running track in the area, someplace where people can get out and exercise in the outdoors, maybe not at the riverfront, but up in the park itself. And then also just that the play structure itself that's there needs some refurbishment and sort of restoration to what it used to be, including probably a paint job. There was an idea to install signs in Spanish where possible, in English and Spanish. And that's something that we've seen in other communities. And so we think that's something that could be adopted here at little cost. And then in terms of improving trails, paths, and river access, a lot of interest in really cleaning up and maintaining and taking care of our riverfront trail. It was noted that it's not always entirely clean. There have been sharps identified down there, and it's just not an attractive place for all people and females and younger folks to exercise. They don't always feel safe. So that was a concern that was brought up. Also, not specific to the riverfront, but there was a concern that the west end of town could use more access to parks, and that there was a perception that the parks are sort of central east, and the west end of town, something closer, especially for young children to be able to get out and exercise would be helpful. Let's see what else. There was a discussion about Taylor Lake, which is either in the city or city adjacent. I think it's in the city actually, and the port area for recreational and fishing opportunities, and really to maybe clean up that area, establish some larger shade trees. Some of the trees that are down there are sort of on the scrub side of life, and really develop that as a better area to recreate, where it feels clean, it feels safe, and it feels like it's something to draw you into that area. Yeah, there was a discussion about perhaps some restroom availability at Taylor Lake would be helpful. Let's see here. Okay, let's talk about dog park just a little bit. There's definitely an interest in dog parks. I think everybody agreed on that people need an area to get out and exercise their dogs. Some of the things that were viewed as optimal were fencing, possible river access, restrooms for the humans that are accompanying the dogs. possibly a hand washing station or a dog washing station where somebody could rinse their dog or their paws before they load them back in the car to go home. Maybe an agility course or some tennis balls or something along those lines would be helpful in the dog park. And then it was also noted that there is one, but it's all the way up on the east end of town, and it doesn't feel accessible to all members of the community or even really understood where it is. So I think I've left out more than I probably included. And Nikki's on the phone or two. Am I leaving off anything that I should bounce back to?
Maybe just the signage as far as being bilingual in some areas. Outside of that, I think.
Touched on that just a bit. Bilingual signage around the community for attractions or directions or historical markers is of interest to folks too. And then in the interest of time, I'll turn it back over to the proctor.
Thank you, Tom and Nikki, both for sharing out some takeaways. And I'd love to have maybe Alice, if you want to chime in. I think yours was the other group taking a look at recreation. If there's something else that hasn't been surfaced yet that came up in your group's conversation.
Yes, thank you. We had a very rich discussion. One of the things we focused a lot on parks, improving trails, paths, and river access. And in particular, there was a mention that this is outdoor recreation opportunities increase equity and accessibility, and things like trail access paths. Those are investments that that can be made in a community that also are very easy for our community members to participate in without much investment on their part. So they don't have to be a part of a club. They can go out and walk on the trails, and it's a wonderful feature. We have such wonderful weather. That's really important as well. This is a center for gravel bike riding, this area. So that's why this is really important. There's a lot of economic development opportunities that we can take advantage of our beautiful scenery, as well as our as being the center for certain types of activities that would draw tourists. What do priorities look like? Trees are important, of course, in Cirrhosis Park, and we know that a master plan process is underway with the Parks District. Let's see, we talked a little bit about the community dog park, but we spent most of our time on trails. And there was this idea about, well, first I want to mention that there is a mention of having the city create a vision around trees, tree plantings. And I know this has been discussed by the beautification committee, and it was important to this group to have that be a focus, a future focus. Also, improving trails. There needs to be a master plan around the trail, river access, and paths. And a lot of focus in downtown as well to improve pedestrian bicycle access in the downtown. Right now, it doesn't feels very disconnected and needs to be improved. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Aubrey.
Great. So we're going to keep rolling and do some takeaways. We've got a few more topics, 5 more topics to cover here. So Josh, do you want to talk a little bit about the economy group's takeaways? I know there are a lot of folks there.
Yeah. So I'll try to put it all together, and I think there's another breakout group, so hopefully they can cover what I don't. What we heard quite a bit was the need to retain our workers, and doing so, obviously, we need to have support for our workers to be able to keep the workers, keep people here, keep people part of our community, want to be part of the community. And there are people, obviously, we know our housing market that we have. People are being priced out. People are moving out of the area. So what can we do to keep them here? The community members, it's difficult to feel part of a community when it's you're just struggling to make it, and you don't live in the area. You're commuting in, or moving further and further out. And the people, obviously, in the service industry, it's the face of our community. It's the first, when you come into town, you see the wait staff, you see the people pumping gas, so these are the people, we need to keep these people here. Vertical housing was talked about multiple times when we talked about developing our downtown or revitalizing our downtown core. And really kind of, some takeaways from it is really just creating a neighborhood downtown. Recently there was a chocolate walk a couple weeks ago that really brought a lot of people to the downtown area. And, we just need to have more things happening downtown. And yeah, just probably jumping around here a little bit. We need some, looking at some investments. There's some urban renewal money. How can we bring that urban renewal money in to assist and develop our downtown area? There's a lot of vacancies in the downtown area. There's a lot of vacant units, a lot of upstairs units that aren't developed out like they could be. And there's a lot of property owners that maybe don't know how to develop, so if the city, could be of assistance in providing these property owners that own some buildings, maybe for a long period of time, assisting them to develop the area and get more use of their units and bring people to our downtown area. And I'm probably skipping a few things here. So Carrie, feel free to jump in, but I'm just kind of looking at all these sticky notes and getting a little dizzy, but I think that covered a lot of what we talked about.
And I think, Nate, you maybe had the other group focusing on this topic. So if there is one or two other things that you wanted to add that weren't covered yet, otherwise we can skip into our next topic and some other takeaways.
Yeah, so really the conversation is very similar, focus on the downtown with housing in the downtown, thinking about support for small businesses, also thinking more broadly about how we think about development in other communities and use public sector tools to help build some of the spaces that both businesses and people need to thrive. Smaller retail spaces, thinking about development of housing. We got into some specific details on things we might do to do that. And particularly on the housing front, I want to point out comments were made on the continuum of housing, everything from helping to house the unhoused, which was brought up as an important thing that will help our economy and our community broadly, to really helping with affordable housing and attainable housing, the entire spectrum. And there was a strong focus on thinking about how our current structures and incentives either incentivize or disincentivize, in particular, affordable housing, and how we can think about how things like fees and SDCs might be made in a way to help might be structured, and zoning might be structured to help us think about how we can create more housing, particularly in the affordable area. So I think that's a big piece of it. I want to highlight, I'll just underline one more thing, which I sort of already said, but really thinking about how we use some of our current public sector tools to help develop places for business development was a huge one. And I don't want to miss also making sure that when we're talking about housing, we are talking about accessible housing for folks.
Thank you all so much.
And Dan Spots pointed out childcare in the chat right there. So childcare, affordable childcare, and also I appreciated what Phil Brady said, which is childcare that also pays those who are doing it well. Both sides of that equation.
I am going to invite our education groups to maybe chime in, and I do want to make sure that we save time for some comment as well. So we're going to just try to squeeze in our final takeaways here to say the next 5 minutes, and then we'll open it up for any additional comment. So from the education group, we've got two folks. If either of you want to jump in, Jeff or...
Sure. Aubrey, can you hear me?
Yes. Thanks.
Hi, this is Jonathan. I was in one of the education groups leading the discussion. I had an excellent crowd filled with some superstars in our community when it comes to education. We were blessed with the presence of the D21 board chair, Jose Aparicio, as well as the current D21 superintendent, Dr. Carolyn Bernal, and the former D21 superintendent, Candy Armstrong. And so we had quite a group, and we had a heavy emphasis on discussion of what are some of these visions that we have for our future for the youth of this community, who genuinely are the future. Some of the areas that we ended up emphasizing some of our discussion on, Chair Aparicio indicated that a new bond measure is in the works. slated currently for sometime in 2023, which might alleviate some of the concerns some of the community has had and has had expressed through this visioning process when it comes down to the adequacy of some of our infrastructure when it comes to schools and some of the facilities. But more interestingly, to me at least, and some things that I never really thought of would be connected with education intuitively, were some of these outside the classroom activities that seem to be indirectly impactful to today's children here in the Dalles, such as safe access to sidewalks and bike lanes and getting to school safely. That seemed to be a concern for our group in enhancing the education for all of the children here in the city. Having effective land use and green spaces for outside the classroom activities. There was some discussion about, I learned a new acronym today, many of them actually, something called Career Technical Education, CTE, which is which it appears District 21 has quite a good path forward on, as well as some internship opportunities for children here in the community. Most importantly, from this discussion, it seems some of the things that this community should be focusing on as we look forward to the next 18 years here until 2040 is upgrading our facilities and our infrastructure and maintaining the grounds where our children spend most of their time. And so that was our main takeaways from the education group that I was leading.
Great. And I'm just keeping an eye on the time, so I'm going to rush our last groups. I would like to give, since we only had one group for our culture, Daniel, do you want to share a few takeaways from that group?
Certainly. So some of the, I guess the big ideas that we had in our group, one was a focus on preserving historical and culturally significant buildings, particularly in the downtown, calling ourselves Historic the Dalles and meaning it. And the other component of that was having community get-togethers that are, say, a fair or like cherry growers that are more culturally diverse and invite folks from the entire community and even those that were native to the area and may not currently live here, and bring them all together for community events where there's a festival either on a downtown street that's closed off or to a local park, where we can all just get together on a regular basis and have that kind of interaction.
All right, I'm going to hold the culture groups. I'm going to see if any of our community members want to take this opportunity to provide a brief comment. If you want to raise your hand, and we can, we'll do a lineup over the next 10 minutes. And if not, then we can circle back to our community group and hear some of the takeaways from that conversation. So if I see any hands, just want to give folks a chance. And if not, then we'll get Caitlin queued up to share some takeaways. All right, Caitlin.
All right, we had a really great group discussing community life, and so a couple areas that were really important and why community and investing in our community is important is because people are raising their family here. And they have their social life just intertwined in our community. And so, there are some overarching things that people were interested in seeing, such as like the low barrier third space. And what we mean when we say third space, at least in like the planning realm, means that a place that is free to go to. So it's like a park or a plaza. And in these themes, we talked about how it'd be nice to have more of these third spaces. However, when we're talking about it, we realize that we do have some third spaces in the Dalles already. However, there's not a whole lot of community knowledge that these exist. And so a big takeaway was that, we had to spread more community awareness with physically wayfinding and also inter-organizational partnerships to create more awareness. So specifically that was pointed out is with the city and parks for them to work together to form a stronger relationship in order to create you know, these awareness for these spaces and create better spaces. A big theme in our conversation was how we need to embrace and celebrate diversity in our community, and especially when it comes to these third spaces and getting the people who are underrepresented in the room when making these decisions on these spaces, such as a plaza or investing in additional locations for this. So it was a really productive conversation, and I'd invite everyone to take a look at some of our notes.
Thanks, Caitlin. Libby, did you have other thoughts to add to the community takeaways? We'll get you unmuted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we had a very similar conversation, the focus on the benefits to people of all ages, growing civic pride, a place to build community. There were lots of ideas and thoughts about areas, again, that already exist in the Dalles for these, and things that have been done in the past, music in the parks and art walks and movie nights and such. I think one thing I would say that our group really pointed out is the need for resources to do this. So somebody assigned to carry it out. We need volunteers. We need to grow the volunteer base. It needs funding. Ideas about having a coordinator, somebody who could post all the events to help advertise it, maybe a volunteer coordinator to organize people. So lots of great opportunities, just needs resources to light the fire under it.
Great. And Jeff and Abby, I skipped over giving you guys a chance to complement the education focused conversation. So if there was something that we didn't cover in that first report out, please feel free to chime in. And I also want to note, there were a couple questions here about what happens to these mural boards where we have all these wonderful notes. We're going to talk about next steps here momentarily, but we will do a little bit of organization and housekeeping in that mural, and then we'll make that part of our documentation of this process too. Great. All right. So I think we are ready to dive back in then to a look forward. Let me just queue up the slide here. So Alice, if you want to talk a little bit about next steps and where we go from here.
I'd be happy to. I think what I read in the chat a little bit there is there were at least one or two groups that weren't covered, and that it dealt with infrastructure perhaps. But in any event, we will capture all those good ideas. And what I've heard is that was a very rich discussion in a couple of those groups. So thank you for all those who participated. Looking ahead, we have some next steps. So we are going to open up, take the results of this town hall and pour it into a community vision priorities survey that will be open March 17th through the 31st. And it'll be an online survey, much like we had before. And if we don't have your email address, please feel free to forward that on to any one of us here at the city. I think my email may be at the very end, last slide. And then after that, we're going to give a report out to the city council at their work session with a draft of this community vision at that time, or at least a progress report on where we are, April 11th. And then the idea is to get this plan adopted on May 9th. So that's our plan and a look ahead. And we look forward to hearing from you in the community vision survey and other venues as we can.
And I'm going to stop sharing here since we can take 5 minutes. Dave and Dale, if you want to share a couple, I do apologize. I did not mean to take government and infrastructure out of the report out. So if you want to share a few things from your group, please do.
Sure. Thank you. And I'll try to be quick because there were some pretty extensive conversations and we covered or raised a number of topics that we discussed, but we talked a lot about the importance of having effective transit systems, safe streets, safe sidewalks, and then talked about, you know, how do we get there and what some of those challenges are. And a lot of the challenges come around funding. And on a similar topic, there was discussion about broadband expansions, and that it's probably appropriate to be sure we're looking at the current and most modern, most efficient technology for the dollar that we're spending to provide broadband, especially as we look towards the fringes of some of the established wired networks. We talked about funding sources for different projects, could include more fully charged of SDCs, paid parking in downtown areas, a street maintenance fee. And we also talked about setting up a system of coordinated and dedicated grant writing support for bringing in additional outside dollars. Talked a fair amount about the hospital and the need to develop a confidence in the hospital and recruit and retain medical professionals in the community, which seems to be a challenge currently. And then we talked about the value of continuing and improving networking amongst the different public bodies or coordination of various efforts. There was also a high priority placed on the need to get the sports complex built, or a sports complex built, which then has kind of a cascading benefit of improved hospital facilities and some other things that might be under discussion. So I think, you know, there was more that we talked about, but that's a pretty quick summary.
Thank you, Dave. And Dawn and Paula, if there's 1 or 2 minutes of anything else
Sure.
out of your group.
Yes, and I do talk fast. So Dave, echoing a lot of what Dave just said, our group also hit on the age of the MCMC campus and the importance of providing affordable and accessible healthcare to all, and building potentially a new campus, larger ER, and expanding services for behavioral health. We got into a little bit of a discussion, this will make Dave smile, about existing roadways and sidewalks and who should be responsible for improvements, and trying to figure out, you know, is that something that the city should be taking a look at, you know, seeing if we can help maintain those. The broadband we did discuss briefly, and honestly, we could have spent another 15 to 20 minutes or even 30 going over some of these topics. And just to kind of come back around in terms of what was really important for our group, was really hitting about agencies and everybody working collectively as, you know, utility providers and infrastructures, those that own those infrastructure pieces, and coming together and, you know, basically working as one and having a much more collaborative approach.
Collaboration is a good note to bring us to a close here this evening. So I want to give Mayor Mays or Alice, if you guys want to have just a kind of a closing word here. We're in our last 5 minutes, and then we can conclude our agenda for tonight.
Mayor Mays, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming. And if the city staff would have told me a couple of months ago that we would have 445 people fill out a survey, and that we'd get 115 people that would show up for this meeting, and that above all, we would be able to pull off an organization that we have a main group, and then breaking into all those breakout sessions and coming back, and with all the screen saving, and we all did that without a hitch, I would have said you were crazy, but we did it, and hats off to those responsible. I was part of the education group, and we had a lively discussion, and I'm sure that happened in all the other 10 groups that are here tonight. And I'm sure that the 118 people who attended contributed to develop a community plan, and that we can realize our vast potential. I moved here 7 years ago, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting sick and tired of hearing about the Dalles potential. So let's take this plan, don't let it sit on the shelf and gather dust. Let's make it a reality. So again, thank you all very much for coming, and I think we're off to a good start. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So there's going to be more information on the City of the Dalles website, thedalles.org. Feel free to visit that. I'm going to, Alice is inviting any input. If you have a question or a comment that we weren't able to address live, please feel free to contact her. And our next step, again, is going to be a community survey that's going to take what we heard tonight and then put that into an opportunity for more people to chime in. through our engagement process. And want to just thank everyone again for your time and your input and your great ideas. It's been just a delight to have so many folks here contributing. So thank you.
Thank you.